Hey guys, today we're here to talk about the Vegas Golden Knights 2022-23 season that was, and then the upcoming season 2023-24 and the outlook on that. Straight into the recap, we'll go. Uh, Pretty good season for the Vegas Golden Knights, I'd say. They finished fifth overall in the NHL, 111 points, 51 wins, first in the Pacific. It's funny when you look at their stats, so like the power play, penalty kill, goals for, goals against, they're all average. Like they're all just, 18th, 19th, 14th, 11th in the league. So, for them to be so high up with yeah, pretty much average across the board stats like that, it's pretty interesting. But they obviously go into the playoffs first in the Pacific. They win their first round against the Jets in five after getting absolutely smoked in game one. But they go on to win the next four quite comfortably. They beat the Oilers in six with some controversy with Pietrangelo obviously having that massive slash against Leon Draisaitl and only copping the 1 game suspension, which we might talk about a little bit later. They move on to round three, where they beat the Dallas Stars in six to move on to the Stanley Cup final for the second time in this franchise's history, where they come up against the red hot Panthers, who came out of absolutely nowhere to even make the playoffs, let alone be in the final. But overall, Vegas Golden Knights just too strong, too good, and they beat the Panthers in five. So, yeah, pretty bloody good season, you could say, for the Vegas Golden Knights. But that's it for the wrap up of their season. I'm going to hand off to Jaden now to take you through the lineups for this upcoming season.
Alrighty. So just under $1 million in a salary cap that is free. Obviously, Robin Lehner being the LTIR dead cap that allows that. Starting off with the lineups, you got Barbashev, Eichel, and Marchessault on the first. Howden, Stevenson, Stone on the second. Cotter, Carlson, and Amadio on the third. Carrier, Roy, and Colasar on the fourth. Defenders, Martinez and Pietrangelo, McNabb, Theodore, Haig, and Whitecloud. Goalies, Hill, Thompson. Scratches, Dorofeyev, Ronberg, and Hutton. So, as we can see, there's no real changes there. The only real notable change there is Riley Smith, and there were notable losses there, being traded to Pittsburgh. Other notable losses being Quick, Brissor, Beluga, and Kessel. Make what you want of Kessel, but he won the cup again, so there you go. That's a notable loss. Yeah, there's not much to say in regards to ins and outs. Obviously, they're flirting with the cap because of the LTI with Lehner, but it's an interesting situation. Like, there's still great depth throughout both forward and defense. Obviously, the up and air moment was the goaltending, but Hill proved himself last year, and that's why I'm pretty sure he signed a 2-year extension. So he gets just under $5 million for that effort. So good on for him. And yeah, like you said, it was pretty much average stats throughout, pretty much around the 18-19 mark to about 11th. I saw for January most stats besides penalty minutes, they were the least penalized team in the league. And then you can probably put on your conspiracy hat and your Bettman hat on for why that is the case and why Pietrangelo only gets 1 game for basically trying to kill Draisaitl, in my opinion, because the puck's nowhere near him. So you can put your conspiracy hat on, and I would fully allow that. But they did earn it. Mark Stone with his play through all those injuries, Eichel having an amazing one, Marchessault. So you can't doubt how good they played as a team during the playoffs. So that is why they won the cup, and they had to go through some really hard teams to do it. Not as hard as probably Florida had to go through, and that's probably why Florida was so banged up at the end of it. But it is what it is, and yeah, it is just interesting how the West and East, I guess, play different styles. East plays more coast to coast, whereas the West plays more physical, a little bit more like East to West physical game, and I think Vegas has a really good mix of both, and that's probably why they split both of them. But yeah, I don't have much really to say on this team, other than that they won the cup. Their roster right now shows that there's nothing really holding it back from another one besides the Riley Smith and how much that hurts. And yeah, I fully see them. They could possibly repeat. I can't see a world really where they don't make the cup this year, the playoffs this year. But stranger things have happened. They didn't make it the year before, so it is what it is. But I don't know. What's your thoughts? Is there any hole that you see that they can't make it, or?
No, not really. I think Riley Smith is a loss, but honestly, they're pretty solid all round. If you're a team that only fields two lines, then a loss of like a Riley Smith may hurt you. But when you play a pretty solid four-line game, they're pretty consistent across four lines. They don't have any. I mean, yeah, you got your Eichel and Stones and stuff like that. But when I say no out and out superstar, they don't have anyone putting up 100 and something plus points. Jack Eichel was at their best, I believe, with at a point a game. Yeah, so 66 points in 67 games. He was just shy of a point a game. So you look at their team in terms of points wise, and it's very level across the board. Even their fourth line last year, 25 points, 30 points, 18 points. For a total of 38 goals, which is it's fantastic to be getting off of your fourth line. Third line was relatively solid as well, obviously with William Karlsson there as well, 53 points as the third line center. So no, not too many gaps. I think Hayden Hill obviously proved himself in the playoffs. I guess that'd probably be the only thing is can he back it up? Because if he can't, it's you going to Logan Thompson. And how's he going to fare? He played relatively well last season as well. But I guess that is the question mark: was it a one-time thing for Aiden Hill? Can he sort of step to that level again? But nah, look, you can put your conspiracy hat on, like you said, about winning the cup. The Pietrangelo thing, the thing that annoys me with it is that sours it a little bit because it's like, okay, he probably should have copped a lot more than a one-game suspension. It was uncalled for, unnecessary, and late.
Well, you try to
Very,
injure the
very
best
late.
player in the playoffs. Because he was by far the best player in the playoffs, better than McDavid, and you're purposely trying to injure him after the
you were
puck's not
about to
even
go
in the
2-2.
vicinity, with a minute and a half left, with 3 goals down, while you're empty net and they're going for an empty net. Like, I don't know if it's like some AHLer that does it, he probably gets 10 games or something. I don't know, 20 games or a huge fine. But because it's another star, I don't think they did it.
Yeah, I definitely don't think one game was enough. I think there were several instances in the playoffs that frustrated me. I mean, the Jordan Eberle one against Colorado was quite frustrating. He didn't even get a game, and he probably should have gotten multiple. The same with Pietrangelo. And it does raise that question, right? Because I hated what the commentators said whilst it happened. They've been targeting Pietrangelo. They've been what? And then they went on to show highlights, and they were all clean hits besides one where Evander Kane got him high, which he got penalised for. And it was like, okay, so you're saying that because Edmonton's been putting on all of these clean hits on Pietrangelo, mostly, obviously that dirty one there, but it's okay for him to just come up completely off the puck and smack. And I don't just mean like to love tap him. I mean, he wound up and just whacked Draisaitl. Could have hit him in the face. Lucky he didn't.
Hands. He didn't aim for the stick. He aimed for the hands.
Well, exactly. And imagine that breaks his arm. That breaks Draisaitl's arm. Whatever. That's a massive injury in a playoff game. When you're about to go 2-2, and to only lose him for one game, you got to ask that question of, yes, they won the game 5, but you do have to ask that question. Like game 6, when he came back, he was a +4 and a big piece in that final win. So, I still think they thoroughly deserved it. They had a fantastic side. They were very well built for it, but it does sour it a little bit because it's like, well, if Petrangelo had copped a 3, 4, 5 game suspension,
To me,
would
it's
Vegas
half a
have?
season, but NHL does weird penalties, regards to
It's
suspensions. But any
it's
other
an interesting one,
any
isn't
other
it?
support, any
Yeah.
other sport, that's like half a season. Because that's intent to injure. Like I can't see it any other way. And I
Well,
think if you it
that
took it to
happens
a
in the
group.
AFL over here.
Yeah, it's like I think it
You're
happens
probably
into every
looking
league
at you're probably
besides
looking
hockey.
at minimum 6 games, which in the AFL is a good 30% of the season. So,
Yeah,
um,
but
yeah, it's
it just baffles me. It just really does baffle me. But and like I said, it does set damper it a little bit. But I feel like they would have won probably without him. Just the way they were playing as a unit, especially that forward
their
line.
depth is good enough.
That
Yeah, their
depth was
depth is good enough.
yeah, exactly. But I feel like they probably would have lost an extra game here or there. Maybe like Florida takes it to game 6, maybe game 7. But I feel like
Mm.
the way they were playing, they still would have probably ended up winning. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah,
yeah. I don't think it takes away from what this side did overall. I think
mm,
they, yeah, were well built for it. You're obviously going to have the conspiracy theory of Bettman's Vegas that he needed to get them a cup, but you can't question the fact that they've built a pretty good side overall.
mm,
You can question the fact of how they treat their players and all the controversy in all of that. But in terms of management wise, for building the team
mm,
that they have, they've done a pretty bloody good job of it. And when you look at the likes of Riley Smith, who's now gone, but and Master Show, who were two big keys, and obviously Master Show in the cup final as well, burying their old team in Florida, who gave them away, who literally gave both of them away basically for nothing.
mm.
It's just it's a funny story, and sports and life's funny like that. A situation where you give away a player, trade a player so they don't take a certain player, and then they take another player, and those two
Yeah.
players go on to beat you in a
Well,
Stanley Cup
I think
7
I think
years
a lot of
later.
it comes down to Cassidy as well. Like how coaches give certain players freedoms to play their games. Because I feel like in some systems, I'm thinking like Islanders, in regards to it, especially like you're told to play a certain style, a certain system, and for a lot of players, it just doesn't feel natural. Like, oh, I've got to be in this
Mm,
spot where really I feel better and more free flowing in that spot. Um, so yeah, it does I think come down to a lot of the coaching and just the system in itself as well on freeing players because the amount of players that have come here then had career seasons to
mm,
me shows that one, it's a good environment. Like they probably taking care of him behind the scenes, but then coaching wise, it's probably good as well. So that's hats off to them. That's the other thing though. They got real good depth, like we've said earlier. But like from their centers, from Eichel all the way to Roy, there was only 2 minutes on average during the regular season in difference on time on ice, and so
mm.
you basically got Nick Roy there, just 2 minutes less than Eichel. You got Chandler Stevenson who played more minutes than Eichel, and William Carlson was just a little bit less as well. So there's so much depth there, and that is what makes this team strong. It's what's going to probably make him strong this coming year as well, and that that is really one of the key milestones that they've built around this team because they don't have huge contracts like Jack Eichel being the first player that's 10 million or over to win a cup. But that's it. Like they don't have anyone higher than that. It's Jack Eichel, Stone at 9.5, and then what you got Petrangelo at 8.8. So there are no crazy deals. No Matthews who just signed 13.2 or whatever it was. There's no McDavid or McKinnon type contracts, or Panarin. So I think that is one of the big keys on how they've been able to juggle these stars, and they've got some outperforming contracts. Marshall So only at 5 million is pretty damn good, especially for what he did in the playoffs. Um,
Mhm.
and they had Hill obviously for a bit cheaper during that run as well. So they've done really good management on the cap. Like they got no real dead cap and
Like
buyouts as well for a young team.
you got 65 points from Chandler Stevenson at 2.7. Like, the team is full of, players playing above their contracts. Like, you can't really say anyone's playing below it when you look over it. I mean, Petrangelo at 8.8, he put up 54 points in the season.
Yep.
He eats big minutes. He plays important time on ice. William Carlson on their third line, projected 5.9 mil, but he put up 53 points. And throughout his seasons with Vegas, he's been well above 50 the whole time. Like, talk about a player that went from nothing to a really, really great sort of hockey player. Like, it's amazing that you've got him on the third, considering, he went from a 20-point player in 80 games with Columbus to, in his first year, scored 43 points. I think he almost scored 43 goals, sorry. He almost scored more goals in his first season with Vegas than he did points in his last two seasons with Columbus. So, yeah, like, you go through this team and there's no one really not performing to their contract, and there's no bad contracts. So, yeah, it's just well done to Vegas, well done to their management. Maybe just treat your players a little bit better. That's probably the only thing I could say.
That's the only thing, and that's probably why a lot of fan bases outside of Vegas don't like this team, or just have their gripes with the team, is because of just how they've treated some players. But they've shown that, trading in some of the assets they've done, like they brought in Mark Stone, Stevenson, Eichel, Barbashev, like even Roy and Colasar. So and Theodore, like they've brought in these really good names, and when you look at a lot of other teams throughout the league, they don't really bring in this asset, and they still have their draft picks. They haven't traded away their future. Their future is going to get more bleak the more success they have. It's just how it works. But one of the things that surprises me is just how many injuries they had throughout the season, with a lot of their players, and they just played through it. Mark Stone played half a season. Eichel missed 15 games. Howden, if you want to mention, missed almost half a season. Cotter, Amadio, like, Carrier,
Roy,
Roy,
Carrier.
like they had multitude. Like Theodore missed 30. So it's just insane to think that, like, with all those injuries, and they finished first in their division, they then go on to win the cup, even with Mark Stone going through his injuries and all the other players as players do through playoffs. But I don't think that gets talked about enough with this team. Is how hard of a season they actually had to push through. It could have been quite easy to finish, third or in a wild card spot with all those injuries happening, and they just kept winning. So
Plus they got thrown spanner in the works with Lena, not coming at all back for this season. It was pretty early on that they knew that he wasn't going to play for the season, but it's also, well, that's a spanner in the works. That's your number one goalie, and now you got to go to your sort of your and your backups, and they still managed to get solid performances, not just in the playoffs ultimately from Hill, but Thompson and Hill throughout the season. 37 games and 27 games at basically 0.915, both of them. So, yeah, like you got to give credit to that team. They worked.
Yeah, like I don't have much more to say. I think they can do it again. I don't think there's much holding him back, and depending on all these teams that seem to win the cup these days are always flirting with LTIR, going over the cap, and I don't see how I can see Vegas doing that again, getting some injury, going on LTIR, bringing in someone else, and then et cetera, et cetera. So it is how it seems to be. I would like to see that fixed somehow, because it does
change.
seem to be like cheating the system in a sense, and it seems to be the trend that is happening now. And
I just don't think you should be able to miss the whole season but be right for game one.
Yeah.
I think if you're right for game one of the playoffs after missing the entire season, I think that's where I have a bit of gripe. I feel like you shouldn't be able to play game one of the first round if you haven't played for a certain amount of time before the end of that season.
Oh, you
And your team has used that as a, if you've been on the LTIR or LTR or whatever, I just feel like you shouldn't be allowed to play in the first game, because I feel like there has to be some sort of punishment. You can't just go, oh, yeah, he's like almost ready right at the end of the season, but because of the cap strap, we're not going to let him play until game one.
Yeah.
It's like there's not a big amount of time between the season ending and the first game of playoffs. So how can the player not be good to go in game 82?
Yeah.
But be good to go
Well,
3
there's many
days
ways
later.
you could do it. You could, say you missed a certain part of the season, you can't make playoffs. You could, hey, you missed all of the season, you can't make playoffs. You could just say that if you go over the cap, you have to be salary cap compliant by playoffs. I don't know. I don't know the way you fix it. What the best solution is, but it does seem to be the method that wins the cup now. Has been the same way for probably 3 or 4 seasons. Now, so that is just my concern that I would like to see somewhat fixed, because it does come down to we'll just throw him on the LTIR just for a bit, and
Yeah.
and do something else,
Yeah.
this $10 million player is playing like trash. Hey, you're injured, all right, and we'll go out and get someone else.
We'll go out and get 2 $5 million replacements. Yeah, it's
and with how
it is interesting.
with how vague NHL is with the injuries, I think it's completely possible, because other sports, like I know at least here in AFL and whatnot, you have to disclose the actual injury. They give like proper time frames. Is it 4 to 6 weeks injury, and it's like specific, like it's the femur that was broken, or it was
Not just a
like
lower body or an upper body.
yeah, it's like the hamstring,
Yeah.
not lower body or
Yeah.
whatever. And I understand it hurts the value of the player, but with everyone doing it and everyone having transparency, I think that's the key. And I would like to see NHL do that. But on to Vegas, no issues. I'd just like to see probably all these average stats maybe up just a little bit more. But I think that comes with just having a healthy roster.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, hey, they finished 5th overall in the NHL regular season. They go on to win the Stanley Cup. You can't exactly complain. Even though their stats are average, maybe that's the key. Be absolutely bang average in every stat possible. I don't know. Like, what do you sort of say? But yeah, look, I guess that's the thing, right? Like, there are teams like Edmonton and Toronto, 2 of the big ones. They've got a fantastic top 6 or a fantastic top line that does basically everything. And they are so potent that they score a ridiculous amount of goals. They're number 1, number 2 around that marking goal scoring, but they also leak a bunch of goals. Whereas in Vegas, they didn't score the most amount of goals, 14th overall, but they only conceded the 11th amount of goals for the season. So, and they scored a significant amount less. Sorry, they conceded a significant amount less than what they scored, which at the end of the day, that's the aim of the game, right? You score more goals than you concede, you'll win games. It's pretty fucking simple. And that's what they did. So, you don't need to be an out-and-out superstar. You don't need to have 300-point players to win cups. You honestly, you just need good,
you need a
solid
team. You
lines.
Need a team. That's what you need. I don't even think you need one of the top 10 best players in the world. You just need a team. And I think it goes for a lot of sports now that it's all about the stars, because it comes with marketing and more revenue, instead of building a team. But that's going to win you a cup. That's probably why the Canes are looking really strong for it. New Jersey is looking like they're going to go through a dynasty. So you just got to build a team, and it starts with the draft, or if you're a new club, it starts with their type of draft, but the expansion draft. But it is what it is. Well done, the Vegas. Obviously, did it really quickly. Hope to see Seattle at some point do it now, and yeah, I've got nothing really else more to say. I think they're probably the strongest to win the division again this year, because I don't think the other teams have done enough to
Well,
better them.
the West gets weaker realistically. Like you look at it and go, Vegas last year, even though the West was strongish, they won it last year in a reasonable year. But you look at some of the teams in the West this year, and you're probably seeing a bit of a fall off with some of those teams. Like Winnipeg Jets probably going to fall down a bit. You're going to have Minnesota, who are in a no man's land sort of position. The Kings, can they sort of back it up? What's the Avs going to do without Landeskog yet again? Like it just, I don't really see the West being overly that strong this season, which just leaves the question like Vegas, if they're good again, they're probably going to finish first in the West, which just again it'll gear them
really
up for another playoff run.
It's really just the Kings, if depending how Dubois goes, and maybe the Oilers just because of the Draisaitl with David factor. Other than that, I can't see really a team. I could see actually Calgary doing a crazy flip. I don't know if they get first, obviously, but I could see them doing a crazy flip because of how many points they gave away just by one goal games. And though Nashville is my dark horse on surprising everyone because of the type of roster they have, because of the coach they got, I can't see them getting first. So yeah,
No.
I think almost first is locked up for them, which is like
Crazy thing to say in September.
It's pretty much crazy. Like, hey, they're making playoffs. Hey, they got their first, and probably going at least round 2 into the playoffs or something like that. But
yeah, I mean, obviously that's to say, like, as long as they don't have a ridiculous, like they did 2 seasons ago, where they just had ridiculously injury prone, all the rest of that sort of stuff, where everything went wrong. As long as that doesn't happen, you could pretty much guarantee that this team's going to be a playoff team again in 23-24, and potentially going on another deep run, which would just be insane.
Yeah.
Vegas fans have had a lot of deep playoff runs. They've had 2 Stanley Cup appearances and a cup, and they've only been in the league for 7 years, for Christ's sake. So, yeah, a lot to like if you're a Vegas fan.
They'll have to rebuild one day. As a Devils fan, I went through 10 years of pain. Toronto's gone through, but even though they make playoffs, probably 40-something years of pain. Buffalo's been
Buffalo's
like 14.
gone through the pain.
Yep. So it's I think Ottawa's gone through 6 years of pain. So the pain will come. So you got to love and enjoy these high moments.
Exactly. And Vegas, you've still got a couple years left of them. So enjoy.
All right, guys. Cheers for hanging out. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel for more content, and leave a comment below on what you think of the Vegas Golden Knights. Can they do it again? Should Pietrangelo be getting the bigger suspension? And I'd love to hear your comments on that. But until next time, we'll catch you later, guys.
Catch you guys.